The southernmost strip of the coast of Queensland is totally unlike anywhere else on the continent. It's a new growth. There are plenty of tradition-loving Australians who are sickened by it, who can't mention its name without a shudder. But if you believe the local propagandists, this is the modern Australian's idea of paradise, and they'll show you the colour of his money to prove it. They call it the Gold Coast. The heart of the Gold Coast is around 60 miles south of Brisbane and 600 north of Sydney. It stretches from Coolangatta on the New South Wales border to Southport, 20 miles further north. At the northern end, the most glamorous end, the land is only a few hundred yards wide, tapering to nothing. It lies between the wide waters of the Nerang River and the Pacific Ocean. 10 years ago, it was a windswept, sea-swept wasteland, sandhills and river-mouth swamp. Today, it's the place that one Australian in every 3 dreams of for 49 weeks of the year. Even the sturdy station wives and the rough-cut drovers of the cattle lands no longer regard Alice Springs or the Isa as the great gay towns at the end of the road. They too vow that one day they will save enough of the season's earnings to get over that 1,500 miles to the Gold Coast, where the high life is really high and the flesh pots are really juicy. Australia has 13,000 miles of coast, most of it warm, most of it sandy. Yet one Australian in every 3 came last year to some hotel, motel, boarding house, caravan or tent along this 20-mile strip. They spent £30 million. The establishments that took the money are spread alongside a road rather overgrandly called the Pacific Highway. They form an untidy, unplanned string of motels, camping sites, cafes, petrol stations and holiday bungalows. 20 ragged miles of them put up in a fearsome hurry to catch the pound notes which are suddenly falling out of the sky. Separately and together, they are shamelessly imitation. They even have the same names. And they've erected images to the same eternal gods of fun. But the heart and soul of the Gold Coast is Surfers' Paradise. Surfers' Paradise is the name that the working girls murmur in their Sydney and Melbourne sleep. Surfers' Paradise, they're the words which the farmers roll around their tongues for the rest of the year with the last taste of the smoky tea and bacon. And this is the paradise. That stucco-faced hotel over there was the building which gave the resort its name. It was owned by a man called Cavill, who bought that plot for £35. A few years ago, his widow sold it for £350,000. And now this is Cavill Avenue, the main street of the Gold Coast. And this crossroad, where it crosses the Pacific Highway, is the very centre of Australian joy. Within a few hundred yards of this crossroads are practically all the names that are becoming synonymous with ripest pleasure throughout this vast country. The motels with the most coveted beds, the ones revered as being set in the very heart of the coast. The Paradise Beer Garden, where no one is too proud to meet or too full to take another beer. The nightclubs, the nighteries and the eateries, Digby's, the Bird's Nest, the Starlight Lounge, the Castaways, the Captain's Table and the Jolly Roger. For about 200 yards down the highway from the crossroads, each foot is tight with souvenir shops, snack bars, juice bars, bikini bars, shooting galleries, beauty centres, outriggers for men, airline offices, surf shops and the stands of the seaside photographers. And then comes the very dream castle itself, the centre of a complex of restaurants and clubs and bars with twin swimming pools and white-shirted waiters bending to the browning bodies on their expensive grills. The Chevron Paradise. It all looks so busy, so prosperous, so sure of itself. Yet only 10 years ago, nobody would have stopped here. There was nothing to stop for. Over this same 20 miles, you would have been lucky to find anywhere to bed down for the night or to buy a cup of tea. What has happened in that 10 years? What massive piece of persuasion has spread over a continent the size of the United States and convinced so many that this is the one patch of land they all desire to bask upon? The story of the Gold Coast is the story of the few who can build on unbroken land in their own minds and make other people buy the land complete with their imaginary buildings. Perhaps the cleverest of them are the land salesmen, the men who buy and sell but do not own, who take their cut, win, lose, or draw. The story of Surfers' Paradise is the story of one such man in particular, a man whose very name suggests buildings on the rise. Wall, Laurie Wall. His name is already a legend on the coast. Some of his clients have grown rich and others have vanished in bankruptcy and disgrace. At least one has committed suicide. Laurie is still here. They call him Mr. Millions, and the local papers spell his first name with the pound sign instead of the capital L. Last year he was reputed to have earned more than anyone else in Queensland, £143,000. He came here in 1952, when things looked very different.
Oh, it was all more or less tea tree, scrub and sand dunes, sand hills. You'd get one house, and then you get 3 or 4 vacant blocks of land with bits of scrubby-looking trees on them, about 10 or 15 feet high, an odd type of palm tree, and but nothing like you see today.
What made you so sure you were onto a gold mine?
Well, it was so small and compact and so beautiful. Surfers' Paradise itself, you have a couple of 100 yards from the heart here, and you're in the wide Nerang River, which is quite a lake of water. Then a couple of 100 yards the other way and you're into the ocean. So we've got a narrow strip of area of land, and when it's all said and done, it's more or less like an island.
Now, you had to sell this, didn't you, to half the country to get them to come here and be convinced that there was going to be a holiday paradise here. How did you do that?
First of all, I realised that to get this place really good, I had to get a goose with a golden egg. In other words, some investor, some man of importance that had a lot of other people tied to him some way, that if I could get him in here, he'd bring others in after him. And eventually I found that man in Mr. Stan Corman. Now, I got him interested in real estate here. I sold him various projects. For argument's sake, Paradise Island was a project which he bought. He bought about 9 acres there, redeveloped it, dredged from the river and created 14 acres. Out of that, he subdivided 89 blocks of land. And I sold the whole 89 blocks in 21 days. And when this project came out with such success, all of the developers in the southern states, straight away they said, gosh, we got to go and investigate, and we've got to see what else. This must be good.
The news of deals like these spread very fast to the big financial centres in Australia. In fact, Laurie Wall took good care that they did. He took out massive and startling advertisements like these. In publicising his own gains, he let everybody know there was big money to be made out of that strip of sand in Queensland. Other real estate men set up offices by the dozen along the strip to satisfy the ever-swelling demand. Laurie Wall had sold his dream all right, and all over Australia the people were rushing to buy. They bought a dream to sell a bigger dream. Everybody with £10 to invest wanted to be in on the Gold Coast racket. Thousands of people bought land they'd never seen. They bought land like this, which pre-boom was valued at around £10 an acre for £1,000 an acre, and at that price they were buying it by the mile. They didn't stop to ask questions in case they lost their chance forever. The thing began to grow to quite monstrous proportions. Huge corporations were formed to help them spend their money.
These outside developers came in, they bought land in the outskirts, they produced colour film, mainly of the centre section, superimposed in with this outer area, went away to outskirt areas and then showed these films, alleged that it was virtually surface paradise, and consequently they sold land.
There's a fair amount of downright swindling then, was there?
In my opinion, for sure.
On a little plot like this one on which I'm standing, which stretches from that peg over there to the peg to which I'm walking here, a plot pre-boom worth around £10, they would spend £400 in advertising and brochures alone. The boom produced some amazing characters. There was a man called O'Grady who formed 222 subsidiary companies and got into the Gold Coast boom to the tune of £26 million, all of it borrowed at around 12% interest. The case of Stanley Corman, the goose that Laurie Wall had brought in to lay his golden eggs, was rather different, as he was really trying to develop. But even he was in debt to the tune of £18 million, borrowed at a crippling 16%. And there were hundreds of others, large and small. The speculation went on and on. The bubble grew bigger and bigger. And at 8:10 p.m. precisely on the 15th of November 1960, it went pop.
Overnight, all the finance houses, the development companies, and all the big and little speculators had to face the facts of life. And for nearly all of them, the facts were simple and bitter. Not for 100 years, and perhaps not ever, would the land be worth a tenth of what they'd borrowed to buy it.
Realizing that the drivers of their financial wagon had gone mad, the Australian government had jammed on the brakes, and all those thousands of investors had gone straight through the windscreen. Reed Murray's alone went down for £36 million. It was the greatest financial disaster in Australian history, and this is what it left behind.
Stretching inland from the Strip, you can find the neglected remains of their exploded dreams. Residential suburbs, which were to have had their own roadways and waterways and churches and shopping centres, were left half-finished or barely begun. Great acreages of land, bought for development at development prices, a month by month going back to the bush. These desolate silting canals were to have been lined with elegant waterfront homes, with lawns dipping to the water's edge, gay boats bobbing at the private jetties. The people who did buy keep their lawns clipped in their isolation and try and keep their spirits up. But they know that the estates as they had imagined them, glamorous districts, glamorously named, Florida Gardens, Miami Keys, are doomed forever. The receivers have been in. They've sold the plots that were priced at £2,500 each for less than £400. It will be the weekend chalets and the caravans of the working man which will occupy these sites, if anybody comes at all. Meantime, the scrub is taking the land back from the bitumen. Through this long whirlwind of gambling with almost every acre of the Gold Coast land, there were a few investors who really wanted to see their dreams realized in glass and concrete. Men who wanted to see not another customer on their empty plot, but hotels and shops and cafes. Stanley Corman was one. It was Corman who bought the Surfers Paradise Hotel in 1957 for £350,000. It was Corman or his associates who bought the site of the Chevron Paradise for £54,000. Then the site of the Hub shopping arcade for another £40,000. They bought, too, a great swampy island behind the Chevron site, raised the level by dredging the river mud, built a large bridge costing £98,000, and split it into 600 building lots to develop at £400 a plot, a total development cost of £500,000. Other developers had committed themselves to big money, too. Efim Zola, a Russian-born Melbourne financier, paid £27,000 for a 40-foot frontage next to Laurie Wall's office. He paid $90,000 more for 106 acres of low-lying cattle land. He rechristened the cow pasture the Isle of Capri and formed a syndicate to spend $750,000 on its development. When the bubble burst, Efim Zola burst with it. So did Stanley Corman, Laurie Wall's golden goose. And a man called Bruce Small was left holding the baby on Capri. He put in £125,000 of his own money, which went nowhere at all. So far, he's spent £1.5 million on development. But he's clung on. He's clung to his own private dream, quite independent of lorry walls. The dream of a planned community on the coast, with quality housing, shopping and schools. He calls it Paradise City. I talked to him on his private island, one of several that he intends to build as part of the Capri project.
Could you tell us a little bit about the type of development you're going to have here? Now, what facilities will the people have who come to this island? What guarantees?
Well, first of all, the covenant protects them against flats, apartments, or substandard buildings of any kind, a covenant that I put into the contract of sale, and which calls for my approval for any improvement they make. But then in terms of amenities, the Education Department are now moving the Surfers Paradise State School across onto the Isle of Capri. We're building a commercial centre with where the facilities will provide for shopping by boat, because it's on the water's edge, and we'll have a parking tie-up for 40 or 50 boats, concrete steps leading up to a mall, a dozen shops, offices, supermarket, car parking for 250, 300 cars, a religious centre where 4 churches will, in one area of just on 4 acres, divided into 4 quarters, Roman Catholic, Anglican, Jewish and Presbyterian will each set up their services, their churches. The Presbyterians are already operating. Then the state school I mentioned. Then a big sports ground for general sports, bowls, tennis, football, cricket and so on. And at the moment we're preparing for a university, a science university, which on paper is scheduled to cater for 1,000 resident graduates in science from all over Middle East and Southeast Asia and Australia. It'd be the only one of its kind here.
How much of this do you feel is reality and how much dream?
It all was originally a dream. It's rapidly becoming reality, and I haven't the slightest misgivings it will all be achieved in the very near future. I would think within 5 to 7 years.
Now, developers lately have had some pretty nasty shocks around Surfers Paradise here. You're in this to the tune of £1.5 million or thereabouts already. It'll cost about £6 million by the time you've finished. Can you be sure of getting that money back?
No, but on the other hand, you don't have to be sure of getting it back, because you don't spend it you don't spend it first. You're spending it progressively, and you're developing with the product of today's sales, you're developing for tomorrow's sales, so to speak. And in that sense, there will never at any stage be a 6 million commitment. It will add up to 6 millions by the time we've progressively built and sold.
You don't feel that this is too ambitious a scheme for Surfers Paradise? Most of the people who come here seem only to want fairly basic accommodation and fairly basic entertainment.
You're referring to the tourists, and agree, the tourists are the greater number. But Australia is developing a need for a place to which to retire. And I believe this climate and this setting and the environment generally provides the ideal place of retirement, and it's being accepted as such.
Things are getting better. With £1 million worth of land sold, Small's debts are down to £500,000. But on the ground, Paradise City still has a long way to go. And on the other side of the bridge, another paradise has been growing, fast and garish. The land crash had killed off both speculators and developers too, but it had not killed the Gold Coast dream. The press stories, the bright brochures, the full-page advertisements of the real estate men had not only seduced the wide boys, they'd taken hold of the ordinary Australian people. From every corner of the continent they came flocking to this strip, loaded with the profits of a year's labour, looking for their paradise and ready to pay. Land crash or no land crash, a paradise had to be born. A paradise had to be thrown up.
There were fortunes to be made for anyone who could make the pilgrims believe that they really had arrived in the promised land, who could make them want to stay enough to empty their pockets and to enjoy that experience enough to want to come again next year. And heaven knows the Australian paradise seekers were not asking for much.
The pilgrims arrive tired, and some make fortunes by providing the beds. There are a few expensive ones. Those at the Chevron Paradise are £8.10 a night. But the Chevron is largely a refuge for the wealthy Jews from the south. Australians generally don't like big hotels, and they certainly won't pay the earth for their heaven. Nearly all of the beds in Paradise are plain and simple and close to the highway where the weary travellers can't miss them. Beds in hotels, motels, botels. Beds in holiday flats, in flatlets and one-room units. Practically all of them have a fine view of the traffic on the highway. These are the most coveted beds of all, the ones within spitting distance of the beach-clad procession on Cavill Avenue, the beds that surround the pools at the Beachcomber and the Sea Breeze motels. A Beachcomber bed and full board costs £4 a day. This is really heaven, close to the main street, close to the sea, close to the pool, and close to each other. The honeymooners next door to the family of 6, and all of them having fun. Few in this paradise ask for privacy. There are beds for 83,000 people under permanent roofs along the strip now, and in the holiday season, not a one without at least one body in it. So every holiday time, at least 30,000 Australians bring their own beds. They bring them in caravans, in lorries, in trailers, and they want to plonk them down between Coolangatta and Southport. So there were fortunes to be made in providing them with places to set them down. In the caravan parks, like the Florida Car Hotel, they provide not only a site for the van, they have 2 swimming pools, a squash court, billiard room, and 2 television rooms. The price for a berth, if you bring your own caravan and 2 children, is £4, 11 shillings a week. There's only one snag. Through December and January, the holiday months, there are very rarely any vacancies. And for many, a sheet of canvas is all they want between them and the Queensland stars, between them and the Queensland winds and the Queensland tropical storm. The campers bring not only beds, they bring stoves and refrigerators, wardrobes and spring interior mattresses, carpets, china cabinets, dining tables, radiograms, dogs, cats, goldfish and budgerigars.
Now, what do you think it costs you for your holiday here on the Gold Coast?
Well, I'd say that we spent, roughly £45.
Now, that seems rather a lot. What do you pay in rent for this?
About £2 a week.
That seems quite a lot of money. What do you get for it?
Well, you get a good camping lot, which is a fair size, generally room to park your car as well as your tent.
Yeah.
And the facilities are fairly good here. They're only new, the showers, hot showers, very nice. And the toilets are very clean, cleaned every day.
Mm-hmm. What else do you get here? Any other facilities?
Oh, you get all the tradesmen calling very regularly. Some of them call twice a day.
And of course, after so long a journey, the pilgrims arrive thirsty. As in any other Australian town, the bars are no places for ladies to be seen in. Utilitarian, seatless, the drinking is quick, purposeful and uncomfortable. They make up for it, though, in the bottle shops, walk-in or drive-in. There's no waiting, and nobody minds the ladies drinking in the car. And Surfers has a glade of comfort that nowhere else can boast, the Paradise Beer Garden, which on any hot weekend becomes virtually beer lodge. On a busy Saturday, they get through a cool 8,000 pints. And here, the girls not only drink, they drink in their bikinis right through the heat of the afternoon. And naturally, any paradise must have its magic and its marvels, the great wonders that would never be found in an ordinary earthly place. And at Surfers, the greatest of these is the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific rolls into the open strand that stretches for 20 miles. Here, indeed, you might sense the immensity of creation. Here, on the empty beaches, you can be alone and feel the surging power of the universe. Unless, of course, you actually want to bathe. Then you move down here between the flags, within the sound of the music blaring from the loudspeakers on the high poles. The music and the advertisements for sun oil, the special offer lunches, the boat trips and laxatives and sunburn pills. Within sight of the lifesavers in their ugly little skull caps, and within reach of their lifeline.
Well, this particular coast is very open, very exposed. From Coolangatta to Southport, it's about 20 miles of beach, and on that 20 miles there's only about 2 or 3 outcrops, so as you can see we get the full brunt of the water all the time. You never know just exactly what's going to happen.
What are the most dangerous conditions here?
Well, at the present time it's quite all right, but sometimes a little bit later on during the year we get the cyclones, and they can whip up very, very heavy storms, very heavy seas. Even sometimes we even have to close the beach.
Half an hour of the surf between the flags, and you feel that you've spent a day at the January sale. And what with the rips and the sharks and the stingrays and the blue bottles, there are a lot of people who never dip themselves in the waters of the first wonder of the coast. They stay at their motels and enjoy the pool, though some of them are quite a bit smaller than the Pacific Ocean. The beach is the one marvel of the Gold Coast, which isn't making anybody any money. But there are 5 man-made wonders in Australia's holiday world, and all of them are mighty profitable. The men who own the wonders are rich now, but a few years ago, only one of them had more than a handful of beans. The tallest of the wonders is the chairlift at 4 shillings a whirl. It works for 12 hours a day and it stops for no one. You're airborne for about 4 minutes, swaying a bit in the unceasing coastal wind. And at the top you hop off almost into the arms of a tireless photographer who snaps everyone regardless of colour, race or religion. From the top you get an unrivaled view of the glories of the coast. And there's a restaurant and a true-put rubberized miniature golf course to add to the excitement. The second wonder of the coast is the ski garden of Keith Williams. And it's the only one where human beings are the main focus of interest. There's a show every weekday afternoon, 52 weeks in the year. And it's the only major coast attraction which costs big money to run, about £200 an hour. It's also the most expensive to see, 7 and 6 a knot. The star of the show is Wally Morris, who was once runner-up in the World Slalom Championship. He can skim the water at 40 miles an hour, forwards, backwards, with skis or without. He can be dragged off a beach barefoot and still stay afloat. He's one of the 2 or 3 men in the whole world who can do this. But in this show, like all the rest here, the stars are not temperamental specialists. The male skiers work in the factory on the site which produces skis and skiers' equipment, or they tend the shrubs in the nursery. One way and another, it all adds up to money. This is Keith Williams, owner and founder of the Paradise Ski Gardens, who started 10 years ago with 10 shillings.
So, being very keen on water skiing, after learning I became an enthusiast and felt that the only possibility was to use water skiing as a spectacle, much in the same way as they have done for many years now in Cypress Gardens in Florida. And this was the basic idea behind starting Surfers Paradise Gardens.
What's the extent of your empire now?
Well, all up, mostly, of course, accountable for by our manufacturing sections, pushing close to $250,000 a year.
The owner of the third wonder is a shy, dogged, likeable man who made his living growing flowers and keeping bees. He seems almost unable to realize what has happened to him. His name is Alex Griffiths. His parents bought this wooden house and the ground it stands on for £250. His flowers attracted the bright-feathered, rainbow and scaly-breasted lorikeets. Griffiths fed them with bread and honey. The people who came to buy the honey stayed to watch the pretty birds. And when the Gold Coast boomed, this is what happened in Alex's garden. The birds come in thousands now, every afternoon at 4. On a good day, they get through about 50 loaves and 100 pounds of honey. And the people come in their thousands too. At feeding time, they stand 3 deep around the fence, reaching out with their bowls of sweet mash, which Alex sets in 18 dozen dishes. And what with the shop, which sells every kind of souvenir from Aboriginal calendars to car pennants and nickel-silver teaspoons, and the cafe, and the rock shop, Alex doesn't have to charge admission at all. He has collection boxes asking visitors to help further his entertainment. He says he could get more if he charged admission, but he's doing quite nicely as things are. Laurie Wall came here once and said, "Come on, Mr. Griffiths, every business has a price." But Alex wouldn't sell. There's only one way that his business could collapse: if some nasty-minded neighbors started laying out trays of bread and honey. The fourth wonder of the coast is George Giltrap's museum. A museum would seem to be about the last place in the world to attract crowds on the Gold Coast. But few miss this one.
The only trouble with Genevieve is the fact that being a film star, she can be very temperamental. Sometimes you can take her for half an hour before she'll stop. Now there is one thing we've discovered, and it might be worth trying. She's a very musical car. Sometimes if she won't start with the crank handle, you blow a couple of notes for her on the horn, and she's quite likely to start for you. Do you think we should try the horn and see if that's what you want? Yes. Okay.
They come at the rate of about 1,500 a day to gaze at the glories of the 1901 Panhard with side chain, final drive and reverse sliding quadrant. At the 1902 Albion, the 1909 Model T Ford. George Giltrap brought his collection here from New Zealand in 1959, intending to retire on the Gold Coast with what until then had been the spare time loves of his life. But the visitors to the coast flocked to the place, and at 4 shillings a head, retirement seemed ridiculous. Instead, he doubled his collection, has bought 2 neighbouring sites for expansion, and the crowds have been getting bigger every year. A ride in George's Cadillac is one of the thrills of paradise.
Now we're going to start it for you, and we've got a couple of ladies as volunteers for a ride in our Cadillac. If you'd like to hop up behind the steering wheel, you can be the passenger, ma'am. Now, she is an American car. Being an American car, you'd expect a lot of accessories. The Cadillac even has Elvis Presley suspension. How do you like driving your Cadillac? Very good. Lovely. Fingertip control.
Alex's birds, George's cars, and Jack's fish. Of all the 5 great wonders of the coast, this is probably the one the Australians love best. About 3,000 a day come to Jack's Aquarium at Coolangatta. There's a traffic jam after every show. Jack himself directs the traffic in the car park and helps collect the money at the entrance. And there's a lot to collect, around £600 a day. Jack too has had offers for his gold mine, but he won't leave his fish any more than Alex will leave his birds.
What do you reckon the business is worth now? If I wanted to buy it, what would you sell it to me for?
Well, I wouldn't sell it in the first place, but it would be worth at least £150,000.
Sounds ticklish.
You are, eh? Now put your left mundoe right in the very end of the board. You know what a mundoe is? It's short, it's abo, and you've got a big mundoe. That's foot. Right. You swim? Can't swim a big girl like this. Put your foot up to the end of the board. Out you go up real high, you tie it up. You smiling? A bit higher. A bit higher. Honeymooner?
No.
You're not a honeymooner? Put your foot right in the very end of the board there. Wait for the girl to feed, right? A bit higher over there. You swim. Put your foot right in the very end of the board. Out you go up nice and high. Up higher. Come on, you're not high enough. Here it comes.
He does this twice a day, 6 days a week, 52 weeks in the year. You can see why he isn't so anxious to retire.
Wait till you see those. Ooh.
Paradise has its comforts and its marvels. It must also have its music. The man in charge of the Heavenly Choirs is a Scot, an ex-bus driver who arrived in 1958 with 12 and 7pence in his pocket. He had been to New Zealand, where he'd heard the Maori bands at the dance halls, and he decided that he could sell that kind of product here.
What sort of entertainment do they want here in Surfers Paradise?
Oh, basically up-tempo, swinging, exciting, noisy, basically nothing cultural, or you don't make money.
This is the music of the Gold Coast, robust, popular, enthusiastic rather than progressive, and practically everyone in every Maori group can both sing and play. Even at the beer garden, they can make themselves heard. Anderson Group is the star turn at the Skyline too, where the contract's worth £500 a week, and where they pack in crowds of nearly 2,000 on big days, spending at least £1 a head. 2 Anderson Groups have been exported to Las Vegas, and the profits roll all the way back to Queensland for investment. Anderson gives the musicians a share in the clubs that he owns and that they play in. Nightlife on the coast is thin. By 10 o'clock, most of the restaurants are closed or closing, and all the licensed premises have locked their doors. But if you bring your own bottles and a pound note, you can stay at one of Jim Anderson's clubs until 2 in the morning. This is the sophisticated one in Cavill Avenue, Digford. Round the corner is the barefoot nightery, the Castaways, where for 6 shillings you can put your own beer bottles on the barrels and dance in the dark. Its net profit is around £40,000 a year. There's one musical establishment in Cavill Avenue that is outside the Anderson Empire, the Folk Village, formed by a group of young liberals, the Australian equivalent of the Young Conservatives. The idea was to keep the teenagers from trying to get illegal drink in the beer garden. They hire 4 or 5 artists and stage 3 shows a week. But there's no big money here. The artists get around 5 guineas a night, and the young liberals don't invest it for them.
They let Dad out before his time to give us a surprise. He come and looked around the place and gently blessed our eyes. He shook hands with the shearer cove. He said that things seemed stale. So he left him there to shepherd us and battle back into jail. So stir the wallaby stew, make soup with the kangaroo tail. I tell you things is pretty crook since Dad got stuck in jail.
But there could be no heaven, night or day, without angels, without enchanted princesses, without a queen for every king. And with the right amount of sunburn and the right amount of it showing, almost any factory or farm girl can become irresistible. In Surfers' Paradise, clothes are used not to conceal but to reveal. It has become the bikini capital of Australia. The fashion show, and particularly the beachwear and bikini fashion show, has become a feature of the program at all the bigger motels. Any mealtime, this sort of thing is likely to walk in between the soup and the entree and leave you with a fish bone stuck in your throat. Indoors or out, by night or by day, you're likely to find something like this quietly creeping up behind you. When you get used to it, it's very nice. Beach fashions are not only made for women either. In Surfers, men are expected to be natty too. The blue serge suit, the braces and the rolled up trousers just won't do. Any of the local outfitters will rig you out in a moment so that you'll be fit to walk by the side of one of these brown angels. There, what about that then? There's no doubt the Australian fashion houses do produce the best underdressed women in the southern hemisphere, and the most remarkably dressed men. You can spend all day watching the girls go by, or the men, as the case may be. And there's the real secret of the success of the Gold Coast, the reason why it's taken such a hold on the Australian people. They don't come for the beach or the food or the show places or the sit. They come for each other. They come to see the human circus. They come to see other Australians. For all their claims to rugged independence, Australians are a formal people. In hotel lounges in Sydney, you wear jackets. In the dining rooms of sweltering Darwin, you wear ties, and if you wear shorts at all, you wear knee-length Boy Scout socks. And it is provincial. The big cities and the country towns are separated by hundreds of miles. But here, the girls go shopping like this, and the rest of Australia comes to watch. Once or twice a year, you'll see a sight that's rare in Australia. The people go gay. They dance in the street like Italians or Frenchmen. This is New Year's Eve, the wildest night in the year. All over Cavill Avenue, the young men are ringing the bell. Of course, tomorrow they'll be raising the stories again that the Gold Coast is wild and sinful. Possibly next week the police will send a van down to find somebody drunk. But the Gold Coast is not sinful. Compared with Surfers' Paradise, Skegness and Yarmouth are depraved. There's no need for vice. The fun of being together is enough. Everybody goes everywhere. The beach bum drinks next to the millionaire, and they both get a kick out of the experience. This is democracy, unassuming, unaffected, unplanned, and mightily entertaining. Neither money nor title counts a buck. Whatever they say in the agents' offices or the Southport City Hall, the Australians don't really want deserted beaches or mountain hinterland. The people of this vast land, scattered over thousands of miles, want at least once a year to see each other. In the raw, with their hair down and their ties and their trousers off. That is the richest of all the joys in paradise.